We are back, and we're joined by Adam Kokesh. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. He's going to be running for Congress in New Mexico, and again, I think that's excellent, and I really wish him the best. I hope he can get a lot of people behind that. KokeshForCongress.com is the website. Now, you go over to Iraq. You're against the invasion of Iraq on moral grounds, just by what's going on around you and in the mainstream media, really, at this point. Tell me what it's like.
Actually, it was this is an important point in terms of the transformation that I went through. It wasn't a moral objection, really. It was more of an intellectual objection, and I just believing the intelligence, believing all the crap and propaganda that we were fed. I still it didn't add up. It wasn't the bottom line didn't make sense. It wasn't going to be worth it for our country. But this goes to the transformation that I experienced, which is really one I can only say is going from being, intellectually engaged in politics, from being, interested and fascinated and engaged, to being spiritually involved. Is really the only way I can describe it, where having gone through what I went through and having the visceral realization that the issues that we debate about, that we call politics, aren't academic. They really are a matter of life and death, and not just in the obvious ways, but in so many subtle ways that we've been propagandized into believing don't really affect people or are acceptable consequences or collateral damage. But that really, when we're talking about government and what is government and use of force in society, we're talking about life and death.
Yeah, we're talking about reality, real issues that matter. And, not just something you see on a movie screen or see on the television. I mean, again, these are people's lives. So you go over there, and, what are some of the first experiences that you have over in Iraq?
Well, I was on a civil affairs team, and the first thing, we didn't even have a real role. They didn't know what to do with us. And this was really the pivotal thing for me in my experience, in understanding that they were making a big deal out of civil affairs, right? Because at the time, the justification of the month for the war in Iraq, or rather the ongoing occupation, was we got to rebuild. We broke it, we bought it, blah, blah, blah. And that's what we were told we were going to be doing in civil affairs. So we thought we were going to have the resources and the support, and we were going to be the tip of the spear, leading the charge to rebuild Iraq and all that happy horse crap. And we were six-man teams attached to regiments or battalions. And you couldn't go anywhere in the Fallujah area at that time without a minimum convoy size of 6 Humvees with machine guns. That was just the basic security protocol. And we had to beg these infantry commanders to get out on their mission, or tag along on their convoys to get out and do our mission. And so it was really frustrating. But we came up with a slogan to justify our existence to them. And it was, we care so that you don't have to. And to the macabre Marine Corps sense of humor, that was hilarious at the time, but if you stop and think about it for a second, it's really screwed up. Because that we care so that you don't have to was not just about our relationship to the Marine Corps infantry. That we care so that you don't have to went all the way up the chain, up to Ralph Paul Bremer, to the Joint Chiefs, to Vice President Cheney, to, if he ever pretended to care, to Bush, so that he could gush on and on about how much good we were doing the Iraqi people while perpetuating a policy that was destroying their country, but really all the way back down to the American people. So you could go back to sleep and they could go be back in their bubbles and not paying attention to the crimes that are being committed in all of our names with all of our complicit support. And so that's a huge thing for me, coming out and being able to wake people up and tell the stories of veterans. And through my work as an anti-war activist, helping veterans tell their stories and, dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, reconciling their experiences and turning them into something positive to help fight the power and make the world a better place. And, for me, I was attached to, my team was attached to Gulf Company, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines during the Siege of Fallujah. We were actually first out at Rock Ammo Supply Point, and that was a little weapons store of Saddam's that was between the city of Fallujah and Camp Dakota, a big logistics base a little bit to the southwest of there. And they told us, one day, packed for 3 days, we're going on a mission, but we can't tell you where. This was, of course, right after the incident with the Blackwater security agents, and I use the term security agents very loosely in a sense, when they drove across the southern bridge over the Euphrates into Fallujah and were ambushed, killed, and had their bodies strung up and burned on the northern bridge there, which precipitated the siege of Fallujah. Of course, if we had known that what we were doing was putting a city of approximately 500,000 people under siege, we would have packed for more than 3 days. Mm-hmm. But we changed rules of engagement more often than we changed our underwear during the siege of Fallujah. And the absurdity of it all was just, we had these cards that they gave us, the rules of engagement cards. They still issue these to the troops today. And it basically is supposed to be the gold standard of conduct, founded in morality, based on what you would think is, our moral principles of aggressive use of force. You cannot, you have to escalate through, you might have heard this, shout, show, shove, shoot, right? Mm-hmm. There's an escalation there. You don't go straight to deadly force if you don't have to. And you have to have positive identification of any targets before firing. Of course, then it turned into, any suspicious observer. So we could shoot anybody, or rather, we were supposed to shoot anybody, who was on top of a building with a cell phone or binoculars, and they became fair game. And then we imposed a curfew on the city, and it was anybody out after dark you could shoot. So, there was a total divorce from morality there that was very disturbing. I was fortunate enough that I never had to pull the trigger, as I was always behind somebody or driving when we were getting shot at it. I never had positive identification. But for the guys in the vehicle I was driving on, machine guns or in other vehicles in the convoy, you're getting fire from a building, and that if you violate your rules of engagement and you engage in that general direction where you saw that muzzle flash, you're more likely to come home alive. And the Marines in your convoy are more likely to come home alive. They're pitting your survival instincts against your morals and putting you in an impossible situation. Mm-hmm. And, human nature is such that in the heat of battle, survival instincts usually win out. And so to think that the people that are engineering these occupations don't know that civilians are going to die inevitably in the situations they're creating is absurd. So that was very, very formative for me to be exposed to all that. But I came home and I was dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, and it wasn't until a couple years later that I was able to get the emotional perspective on my experience to realize how criminal the enterprise that I was a part of was.
Well, how long did you actually spend in Iraq?
7 months. Typical tour for Marines now. It was enough. February to September of 2004 in the Fallujah area. And
then you said, you came back. It took you a couple of years to really deal with this emotionally. When do you start getting involved in activism, telling your story to others? Because I always tell people, if they really don't know what's going on in Iraq, go check out the movie Iraq for Sale. It gives a pretty good representation of what's really going down there and, this for-profit war. I've actually seen some of the people that have been featured in that live and, taped their interviews and whatnot. So, it was a very eye-opening film for me. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's excellent.
Yeah, I have some friends, actually, veterans who are in that movie who are members of Iraq Veterans Against the War. Mm-hmm. But it largely focuses, as the title implies, on the kind of economic corruption.
Yes.
All corruption is inherently economic, but the direct criminality with the way the money is flowing in Iraq.
Sure.
As opposed to the way the bullets are flowing in Iraq, which is a whole other level of criminality. And if you want to find out more about that, we do have a documentary coming out called Winter Soldier that's in production right now for Iraq Veterans Against the War. But if you want to hear some of the real stories, we have a whole collection of testimony at ivaw.org on our website. But let me say, just in the abstract and stepping back, it's one thing for me as a veteran to come home and tell my story and say, you know what, this war is screwed up. This war is not what they tell you it is. Here's the real dope. This is what we saw. This is what's going on, and this is why we need to come together and stop it. But and you can unite a lot of people around that. And as we've seen, we've really got most of the country on our side that we need to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan one way or another, despite the national dialogue and all of the propaganda around it. But that doesn't get to the broader problem of statism. government to solve problems in society that we should be able to solve for ourselves without the aggressive use of force that really everything government does is contingent upon. Mm-hmm. And like I said, as obvious as it is, like for me to say, well, I went to Iraq, people are telling, distortions and lies about what's going on in Iraq, and I got to set the record straight. You know what?